All right, so we're going to get started. So anybody who wants to take a seat, now's the time. There's room in front where you can ask good questions. Thank you. All right, so welcome everybody. We're going to talk acquisitions. My name is Louis-René Auclair. I run RocketJump Games out of Montreal, a consultant that helps people make better games, better pitches, hopefully get funding, and in the end, ultimately, get purchased by a big company like Jam City or NCSoft. With me, I have Michael Chang and John Peterson. I'm going to actually ask them to introduce themselves because I never do it justice. So, Michael?
Yeah, hi, I'm Mike Chang. I do investments and acquisitions for NCSoft in the West. Before this, I used to do work for Electronic Arts. Louis, I'm kind of wondering why there's not more people on this panel so we can talk less. And one reminder here in terms of what I'm going to say, when I first started speaking on these panels, I was at EA. And I had to go talk to the head of EA Corporate Communications to get instructions. And the one instruction that carries forward to this day, it's not a good thing for a corp dev guy to get quoted in a paper. So I'm probably not going to be as controversial as some may be.
I never get quoted in papers. I'm John Peterson. I run M&A for Jam City. And Jam City, we got 7 offices, mostly located in the US. And 500 employees and looking for great opportunities.
Thanks, guys. So to answer your question, Michael, the reason why there's not more people on the panel is that most of the time when people see I host a panel, they get so scared of the student mass that they don't want to join. So hopefully these guys, it's not the last time we sit on a panel together, which might be. But seriously, the video games market is moving extremely fast. 3 years ago, everybody was investing in VR, and now about nobody's talking about it. So you have to be on top of it. So the first thing I'd like to talk about is, what is your current focus as a company, because things move super fast? And can you tell us a bit of examples of the recent acquisitions your company's made through your support, or your team?
Sure. So in terms of where I'm breaking up my time right now, obviously we're here at Pocket Gamer. I've gone from 100% mobile 4 years ago to about 30% mobile, back to about 50 in terms of where I'm looking for targets for acquisition. On the PC side, I went from 0 PC console to almost all of my time, back down to a bit of a balance. Throwing in there a little bit of AR, VR, audio games, instant, other areas, just to make sure that we're seeing everything that's a possible opportunity. Trying to be kind of early, find early leaders in small but rapidly growing markets if we can do so.
Yeah, so Jam City, we're pretty darn good at puzzle. So we want to focus on that and make sure that we personally are doing very well at that. But as far as looking for company studios games that do what we do, have great teams and can add to that. But then also we're looking at other verticals that we, are not good at. Mid-core, not very good at mid-core. We just bought a bingo game called Bingo Pop out of Toronto, and we certainly couldn't do bingo on ourselves, and don't want to, but we want to find the best out there that can do that. So that's why we made that acquisition.
Thank you, guys. So one of the things that is difficult to understand when you're a studio, indie studio, depending on your size and experience, is how many studios are being considered for M&A, right? I mean, do they meet with tens of studios a year or hundreds of studios a year? So one of the questions I'd like to ask is, what do you feel is your of meeting studio versus closing? And at the same time, what is that key USP you're looking for in a team, in an owner, in a group of people that you want to invest in?
Actually, I'd love to ask the audience to try and put themselves in our shoes. Let's say for every corp dev person you see at a company, how many deals do you think they look at in a year? It can range, but how many do you think on average? Any guesses? How many? 1,000? It's a lot. That's like 3 a day. Anyone else? So I did a, go ahead. So I did a count among me and my colleague, and it was a couple hundred a year that we seriously consider. A lot more in the funnel, like 300, 400 or so.
No, that's exactly about right. Not thousands too many. I mean, that's calling genera, 3 times a day. That's tough. So, but yeah, I mean, that's a couple hundred, 200, 300 easily.
It's a little frightening how shallow that can be, right? I mean, literally how much time each opportunity. You want to spend as much time as possible. You want to give everyone your time and attention. You want to play all their games, but you literally have this queue, and you have to process through it as you can. Right?
And what are you guys looking for? What's the one thing that really hooks you early, right? Obviously, because then you have to do the due dil, but...
Who is the audience? It's the audience, the talent, right? First and foremost, it's the quality of the people involved with the company. Could be leaders, could be rank and file, but it's all in all the talent of the company. You and the audience today. We're trying to find the best people to affiliate with, who can make the best games, who can find that kind of special secret sauce in a bottle, that lightning in a bottle, so to speak, right? So it is you and the audience, first and foremost, that we're trying to judge, get to understand better, kind of do some dating a little bit to figure out, is there a right personality match, number one with your studio, but also for what we're trying to do with our company as well.
Yeah, just to kind of add to that, I think studio is very important, culture is important. The team, how long's the team been together? Has a team failed before? And are they still together? That's really important because that happens a lot. You see it in a number of companies right now. They've had 2 to 3 failures in the past, and then they just absolutely hyper-focus on a single game, and they've been extremely successful. So seeing the failures in the past and regrouping and figuring out, all right, we're going to go for it in this vertical, in this game specifically, and we have specific KPI targets that we're going to hit, and that is their number one focus, and that is so attractive to us, kind of way beyond just a good game. It's just like, how focus.
John's commentary actually brings to a point. Could I ask you by show of hands, how many of you worked at a large game company before? An EA, an Activision, a Take-Two, THQ? Every company is very different. We got Mark Stevens walking here. He worked at EA for a while. Every company feels very different. EA feels different from Activision, feels different from THQ, well, THQ no more, Take-Two, Bethesda, the Chinese game companies, the Korean game companies, the Japanese. Everyone has a different flavor for what they're looking for in acquisition. What is the right cultural fit? What is the right look and feel? What are the right holes to fill? And so, honestly, you should all in this audience, date around. You should get the different sort of acquirers out there if that is something that you want to have happen for your studio or for your team.
Yeah, so I think gathering experience at a big studio is important at one point. But who here runs a small indie studio? I didn't want to use the word small. Let's say who here runs an indie studio and contemplating either hoping making their great big hit or getting interest from a major studio for an M&A deal? Show of hands, please.
You don't want us to cash you out?
Yeah. So it's one thing that was mentioned is really important to me. When you go through an M&A conversation and you start, even before due diligence, people try to hide their mistakes. They try to hide the fact that they don't have a game that is that successful. There's a lot of data out there that can get these guys to know about everything they need to know about your games. And if you try to say, we didn't make any mistakes, so it was the publisher's fault, he didn't put enough marketing in our game, and we did have the LTV, but they didn't know how to do user acquisition, that's not a good reason. I mean, it's much better to show your experience, your key learnings, how you grew through it, than to pretend that you didn't do those mistakes. Because they're going to know, they're going to see it, and then they're going to get kind of weird on you.
I mean, if I could on that line, there's a phrase in this business, success has many fathers, failure is an orphan. The thing is, it's a really small business in games. We can pick up the phone and call. It's like 6 degrees of separation here. People claim credit for things. People throw blame on other people, throw shade on other people. You can very easily find out the truth of the matter by checking with 1, 2, 3 people, starting to pattern recognize on things. I am actually quite amazed oftentimes that people don't pick up the phone and call. So when we're looking at different deals, oftentimes people I work with, will know people around the table, and oftentimes they just take it on faith. They don't check. To be frank, I just had one of these examples yesterday. There's a large game company that's looking to be divested from a parent. And they represented everything that they're doing. They're quite profitable. They're growing nicely. Things are going great. I put in one call, though, and someone's like, you know, their parent company is going bankrupt, and there's a lawsuit with their CEO. It'd be nice to have been told that a little ahead of time, and we will find out eventually. So hiding these sorts of issues are not really a good thing because they blow your credibility at some level.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. I don't know if you guys know the story of Netflix and Blockbuster, but I think that's probably going to be my most controversial question, which is not that bad. As you know, Blockbuster was offered to buy Netflix a while back, and they said no. They thought that business model was way better. So my main question to you guys about this is, what is the one that got away? What is that deal that you're like, we're going to pass on this one, and then 5 years later, you're like, you don't want to talk about it, but now you do?
Well, it's 2 years, but yeah, this one. So this guy became a good friend of mine. We passed on him early, and then a year later he comes back and he says, hey, we got a good game. I'm like, okay, cool. So he shows me the game, and I help him out a little bit with the game. I'm like, maybe change this, change that. And he goes, okay. Hey, we're getting some good KPIs. All right. And then see the KPIs, fantastic KPIs. I'm like, yeah, we're interested-ish, but, let's talk at GDC. Well, he signed a deal a week before GDC, and it was Golf Clash. So that one hurts. Thanks, Paul, if you're here.
What about you, Mike?
I'm going to pick on two because this is fun. How many of you play League of Legends or have played League of Legends? No? Pretty popular game. Riot Games has gotten quite big. So in 2010, I was playing a lot of League of Legends, and I wanted to bring it up to the heads of EA. So you would think this is a no-brainer, right? This is a company that at the time was doing $5 million in revenue a month, $3 million in profit a month. This is October 2010. Okay, should be no problems to get the heads of EA to meet one of the leading free-to-play PC game companies. I'm not going to pick out the names here, but one of these people may be the CEO of Zynga now. What do you think the response was when I asked, would you take a meeting to League of Legends? It's a copy of a great mod. Amazing. So again, the story to beholder is not, it's a funny story, but it goes to show you that when people are working on their day-to-day jobs, very focused on making their numbers, building up their games, focused on the day-to-day activities of the company, often they can lose sight of the broader picture out there, right? It's very tough to convince people, and you have to fight very hard with conviction when you find something that's really interesting to discover out there. I'll give another example out here. How many of you know a small Finnish game company called Supercell? So, can you name the games that Supercell has released? Just what has Supercell released so far? Clash Royale. Clash of Clans. Brawl Stars. Someone said Heyday. So 5 games? Five mobile games, right? Is there another game that we're all forgetting? How many of you remember when Supercell was making Facebook games? That's right, Gunshine. So Gunshine. So when I first joined EA, mobile wasn't where I was spending time. I was focused on buying more stuff for Facebook to add on to Playfish. We were fighting heavily against Zynga. It was the Facebook wars, right? If you didn't do it, Playfish would do it. Or if you didn't buy it, Zynga would buy it. If Zynga didn't buy it, Disney would buy it. It was that sort of a time. Supercell came up with a game called Gunshine. It was the most beautiful, hardcore Facebook game I'd ever seen. And actually, we asked one of the people who often comes to these conferences, a guy named Paul Hayden, to give us an introduction. And Paul said, sure, I've invested in this company. I'll give you an introduction to this guy, Ilkka Pananen. Great. So we had sent some folks up there to take a meeting. Like, yeah, this Facebook game is kind of interesting. Missing the forest from the trees here, right? Missing the fact that this was an amazing company making incredible games. Didn't matter whether Gunshine was successful or not. They had the prospects to make something even better for the future, and obviously applied very well in mobile. And what sucks is actually not only did we miss it that time, they came back again looking for more money, and the answer was too expensive.
I was really hurt. How many people here work in a studio that does work for hire? Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, about. Other studios, they make your own game, right? There's a huge difference in how you evaluate a company that does work for hire versus own IP or other types of work. And I think this is a common misconception that people say, hey, I have a great team, we're making great games. But if you work for hire, you always or almost always will get a lower valuation by a publisher trying to hire, unless they just want butts and seats. I'd like to get your perspective on how either people can change that mentality or how to approach this when you're looking at an M&A deal for work for hire versus own IP.
Yeah, that's work for hire is difficult for us to value unless the team has actually built some of their own IP that we can put more value on and kind of disregard the work for hire because if we're going to do an acquisition, the work for hire is not going to last, at least with us. So hopefully they have some of their own IP, at least in the works, and if that's the case, then we'll value it on that. But it's difficult for us to put their current work for hire business.
It's frankly a bit of unfair behavior here. It is true that oftentimes work for hire is dismissed in value. It's kind of a cost plus service. But actually, much of the work that's done is done in the space, and I didn't know this 8 years ago when I first joined gaming, is outsourced. Is it art? Is it development, infrastructure, other areas? Again, success has many fathers, failures an orphan, and you have to track where success comes from. I'm going to pick on Scopely for a minute. How many of you know Scopely? Pretty large independent company these days. How many of you know their mobile game for Walking Dead? So licensed from John Goldman over there at Skybound. But how many of you have seen or heard about the Scopely's Walking Dead game? Cranks out a ton of cash. It spit out a ton of revenue, spit out a ton of profit. Did Scopely make the game? Anyone know who made the game? You invested in it, so you don't get to answer. So Shanti Burgle invested in this company when he was at Gree. Anyone know the name of the company? Go ahead. It is Iugo, a Vancouver studio. So it's actually quite a studio that made this game. So we can't actually afford to ignore these work for hire, even though it's unfair that we generally have this sort of a bias, right?
Yeah, it's very difficult to find the gold star ones out of it.
Louis actually comes from, I'm sorry, I'm going to pick on a bit of a competitor from your former days. He comes from Montreal, Quebec area. Yes. So some of us have played a Bethesda, or we think it's a Bethesda game called Fallout Shelter. How many of you guys have played Fallout or Fallout Shelter? You know this game? Who developed Fallout Shelter? Anyone know? Hibernum. No,
I wish.
Sorry, Behavior.
Behavior. Wow, that's like a double shot.
Sorry, that was your own company. But again, and actually, this was a company that was very well known for work for hire. I remember seeing doing a lot of work for hire deals, and then they started making their own original IP. Quite valuable. It's their own IP. They own it, and they get all the profit from that. Right? They're a much more valuable company today than they were when they were just purely work for hire.
And they just raised a lot of money.
Yeah, this is an example where you can kind of leverage the work you've done, the experiences that you developed, being paid by someone else. It's kind of, sometimes it's risk-free because it's almost like oftentimes you're charging cost plus. But to take that money, save that money, IP, and make something of it. Mm-hmm. Right?
So 2 minutes ago, I got the finger that says you have 1 minute left. But can I cheat and have one more question? Thank you. So one last question, guys. One of the biggest problems people have is putting a valuation number on their company. Is it a percentage of revenue, of profits? Is it an amount per people? Can you give us what you're seeing, a range, I know it's a range, of what you're seeing right now being the de facto numbers to start a conversation in the market?
So I used to have a standard answer when Shanti and I were trying to buy companies at EA. It was 2 to 3 times revenue or 10 to 15 times EBITDA. As I got old, and started spending more time with these studios, I realized that's actually the wrong way to think about this one. It's actually about what holes, what solutions, what problems do these companies fix for me? How much am I willing to pay for them to solve problems for me? I will say the one thing that has been interesting in this space for the last 8 years that I've been doing this, oftentimes studios, independents come to us and they're looking for us to solve their problems. I appreciate that, and I actually do want to help them. But the reason why we're buying your company, if we're doing so, is because you solve a problem for us. And how much we pay for you to solve that problem for us depends on how much pain we feel. The more pain we feel, the more you can get from us, regardless of what the absolute valuation numbers should be.
Figure out where they are. Any comments on that, John?
Yeah, I think it depends on where the games are, where the teams are. I mean, a lot of times we're talking to studios that don't have any revenue and or EBITDA for that matter, and you know, you can't put a multiple on it, but you can look at, you know, where the game's at, what the experience of the team, and, you know, like Michael said, you know, what void does that fill for us, and that's pretty important. So, you know, a lot of times we won't give a multiple. It's, you know, on early stage companies, but we'll make up for it in an earn out.
Cool. Thank you, guys. Thank you, guys.